In the center of Seattle sits the headquarters of a corporate operation that processes over 13 billion items a year. But recently, this logistics juggernaut made a quiet retreat. They permanently closed all 72 of their Amazon Go and Amazon Fresh physical stores. On the surface, pulling the plug on a heavily promoted brick-and-mortar expansion looks like a massive failure in retail strategy. This bar chart puts that retail retreat into perspective. In the exact same quarter they abandoned those physical locations, Amazon reported $155.7 billion company away from traditional retail metrics and toward something much larger. The model relies on ecosystem layering. Rather than relying solely on vertical integration, building systems exclusively to sell their own consumer products, the enterprise constructs highly efficient infrastructures and then rents those exact infrastructures out to the rest of the world. From this perspective, closing dozens of grocery locations is a logical step. They shed a low-margin retail experiment to focus on a highly profitable corporate operating system. You can see this playbook running clearly in the cloud. Training a modern generative AI model requires processing hundreds of billions of parameters, taking months and tens of millions of dollars in raw compute power. Rather than buying all that expensive hardware from external vendors, Amazon designed its own proprietary silicon, chip families named Graviton, Trainium, and Inferentia. The newest generation, Trainium 2, delivers training speeds 4 times faster than its predecessor. At the same time, they've introduced Ocelot, a quantum computing chip prototype that reduces the resources needed for error correction by up to 90%. Step 1 is internal optimization. Running systems on custom silicon drastically cuts AWS operational costs. Step 2 is externalization. AWS rents this subsidized compute capacity to external clients, including major AI developers like Anthropic and enterprises like SAP. By transforming their own largest internal expense into a product they can sell to others, they lock in an almost unbeatable advantage in the enterprise market. This exact strategy is now being deployed in the physical world to manage the logistics of moving billions of packages. Inside their fulfillment centers, over 1 million robots use coordinate routing algorithms called Deep Fleet to optimize transit paths. For dense urban areas, they've built over 85 specialized same-day fulfillment centers carrying only high-velocity items. They continue to expand this physical reach, committing $4 billion to double rural delivery capacity, while simultaneously launching Project Kuiper satellites to blanket remote regions with broadband access. Once that internal logistical machine reaches peak efficiency, the pivot happens again. With the launch of Amazon Supply Chain Services, they open their internal network to outside businesses. Independent companies can now rent Amazon's end-to-end supply chain, from international freight to last-mile delivery. Even their cashierless technology, pulled from closed grocery stores, is repackaged and sold as a service to third-party retailers. The delivery mechanism that built the retail empire now functions as a standalone, monetized logistics utility for the global market. With an ecosystem processing hundreds of millions of products, data requests, and logistical movements every day, traditional navigation methods start to break down. To manage this volume, they've introduced Alexa for Shopping, an agentic AI layer built directly into the main search bar to replace standard keyword queries. It operates as a personalized purchasing agent. It reads through product descriptions and thousands of reviews, generates dynamic feature comparisons, checks price histories, and automates routine purchasing decisions. This agent model extends straight into healthcare. Through One Medical, a new health AI assistant interprets lab results, manages prescription renewals, and acts as a direct triage interface for Prime members seeking care. These AI assistants function as strategic connective tissue. They parse consumer intent, routing the resulting demand directly back into Amazon's physical and digital infrastructure. Looking at the company's origins, it's easy to see why consumers still think of Amazon as an online bookstore that eventually sold everything else. But first-party retail is no longer the engine driving the company's expansion. This pyramid shows the modern function of that retail base. It acts as a training ground, generating the extreme scale and data required to build the infrastructure layers above it. Once built, those upper business-to-business segments scale up to account for most corporate profits. The company has evolved past being a store. It operates as an invisible utility tax on the flow of modern commerce. Whether a startup is training a new AI model, an independent seller is shipping a package across the country, or a patient is filling a prescription, there is a high statistical probability that Amazon's infrastructure is earning a margin on the transaction.